Cheta leads, I don't know what Cheta would want us to call him as. So with me today is Cheta Nwanze, who is, of course, an analyst and an expert on many things. And I know I'm being specific on this because he's very careful on what we introduce him as. And I don't know if I want to associate him with some things. So Cheta, send in the conversation if you want me to. Stephen Kefason is an activist, a journalist, and many other things from Southern Kaduna, who has been a leading voice in, the conversations on Kaduna State, progress in Kaduna State, and basically the way forward for us all. And so it's three of us. And for me, I want to talk about the kind of conversation we're going to have here today. And this conversation, number one, should state the problem, and number two, should state the solution. So that solution is very key. And what are the key problems we're facing here? Another thing that is very important is, this conversation tends to isolate Southern Kaduna. So I would also like to see if this is just a Southern Kaduna problem, if it's an isolated problem, or we have a bigger issue at hand. And also kind of talk about what constitutes Southern Kaduna, because it seems this conversation also looks like, this is a very small place, or it's one clan or something. So we should be addressing that. So of course, the Southern Kaduna crisis, this has been quite difficult. It's also quite a difficult conversation to hold. The fact that we've had quite a number of attacks in the past weeks, and dare I say months, and some of us are personally affected by these attacks. So it's a tasking conversation to have, but we'll all try our best. So my first question is, what is happening in Southern Kaduna? Media reports have told different stories. Some say it's bandits, some say it's herdsmen, communal crisis, religious crisis. What exactly do we know is happening there? Is this a crisis by the Fulani ethnic nationality, or is this Christian social movement, or like Christian social movement of Nigeria calls them? What is this? What is Southern Kaduna? So I would put Cheta on the hot spot. Cheta, please go first. I would like to hear from you, from the angle of an expert in security in Nigeria. What is in Southern Kaduna?
Okay, first, I'd like to seek your indulgence if my connection goes on and off once in a while. I'm somewhere and the internet is not strong here. Now, what is happening in Southern Kaduna needs to be taken from two perspectives. You need to look from the historical perspective, and then you need to look from the larger geopolitical perspective. The historical perspective starts about 200 years ago, and I think many people tend to forget about that. So you had the jihad of Usman Dan Fodio, which happened quite 2 centuries plus 2 decades ago. And the area that is now called Southern Kaduna, I think it's important to point out that Kaduna in itself did not exist at that time. The area that is now called Southern Kaduna was not conquered by the Fulani, but they sort of kept it as a reason to take slaves, to raid for slaves, to attack people. And then the British came quite some time later, between 50 and 100 years later. And by the time the British were done, they had consolidated.
Cheta, we're losing you. Cheta, can you hear me? Okay.
Hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, please carry on.
Okay, again, my apologies. By the time the British were done, they had consolidated all of that area into what they called Northern Nigeria. And they kind of put power in the hands mostly of what we now call the Northern elites, who were the overlords of the area. This played into a lot of the tension that we see now. So somewhere between 1920 and 1932, they put this region under the control of the Zauzau Emirates. And then this region was later transferred to the Gemma Emirates. The colonial administration employs more of the Hausa and Fulani people who are predominantly of the Muslim religion. These people had adopted or took on the Western education first before the indigenous tribes of that region, who were mostly animists, but over the following decades converted mostly to Christianity. So as time went on, Nigeria got what we like to call independence. I think we can have a discussion about that later on. But this region was in a northern region, remained in the Zaria division of the northern region until the northwest, the Kaduna state was created. And after Kaduna state was created, the conflict in this particular region began to boil down slowly, localize more and more. Now, in 1987, we had two major riots. We had an ethno-religious riot that started from a college of education in Kafason and eventually engulfed the whole states. And then in 1992, there was the famous, or do I say infamous, Ndi Kato riot, which was a conflict between the Hausa Fulani traders and the ethnic group, and it spread all the way to Kaduna City. People who were found by a military tribunal to be behind the
It's breaking again. Cheta, can you hear me?
led.
Okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, so you have to take that again. You said people who were found by the yes, people who were found by the military tribunal. You stopped at people who were found by the military tribunal. Can you hear me, Cheta? Okay, so while we wait for Cheta, Stephen Kefason, if you just give us, brief summary from your own end, and then Cheta will come back in.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Cheta.
Okay. Yes. What I'll do is I'm going to stop my video to see if that.
Okay. Let's see that. Okay, so Stephen, give us a brief. Okay, Cheta is back. Stephen, before Cheta comes in, just give us a yes. While we wait, Cheta will continue from where you stop.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, clearly.
Good. Even though Mr. Cheta is going down history lane,
yes,
trying to tell us what happened 100 years ago. Now, I'm not a historian, but basically, I think for the few years I've actually been in this system, especially the crisis in Southern Kaduna, I've been able to find out certain things that are key. Especially when things like this happen, most times the media, sorry to say, tend to misinform the public, and that is why we are having different narratives here and there. It depends on which camp you belong. Everybody pick the narrative they want to believe. But then I think from my interaction with some communities that have been affected before, I've actually visited most of these communities. I've had interviews with even both the indigenous people and the Fulani settlers. And they tend to have a narrative. What's this narrative? Communities are being invaded, sometimes in broad daylight. People are being killed. And the same question everybody is asking, why are they being killed? But if you ask an average Southern Kaduna person who is in Zango Kataf or is in Chawe or is in Kaura or Jama or wherever, what they tell you is, we are being killed, we are being displaced from our land. And that interests me, like, people are being killed and they are being displaced. Why are they being displaced? And what happened to the land after they've been displaced? you know. So basically, in 2013, there were actually attacks in Kaura local government, to be precise. Then in 2014, there were a series of attacks in Sanga local government. You know, I'm taking us back to at least when we started enjoying democracy. I'm not going down history lane now. I'm just taking it from 2013 to date. But then there was a cessation of this attack between 2014 and 2015. Then after the elections, sometimes around 2016, May 31st to be precise, the current attacks we are having started in a community called Ninte in Jema local government. And I was so interested in what happened in that community that I had to travel down there. It's a community that is many kilometers away from the major road, like it's cut off from the outside world. There's no network, there's no road network, there's no electricity, so they are just there. So I think that was where the recent waves of attack actually started. And from Ninte, they moved to Godogodo axis, they moved to Angwa Anjo, all in Jema local government. And this attack have similar pattern, like communities are invaded at night, sometimes on broad daylight. People are killed, especially women and children. The next thing, the attackers will move. After 2 or 3 days, they'll go to another community and attack. So this thing has been happening. Then in 2017, it got worse. Like it became frequent. Everyday communities were being attacked. Then 2018, then 2019. Then after the 2019 election, there were what I call relative peace in southern Kaduna. Then lately, between April and July this year, the attack became more and more deadly. You have communities being wiped out. You get. So now if you look at it, currently as of today, there are over 40 communities between Kachia local government and Kajuru local government that have been completely displaced. I have all the names of these villages. And some of these communities have been occupied. Yes, I'm saying it, I'm putting it on record. Some of these communities, especially in Kajuru local government, have been occupied by this militia. Some of these villages are being used as their camp where they kidnap people and take them to. And some have been settled, as there are people that have come to settle there as we speak right now. On 29th of this month, the day before yesterday, some villagers went to Rogo to check their farm, because since they were displaced around May, June this year, they've not been able to go back. So they went to check their farm, and these militias attacked and killed one of the villagers. So, but it baffles me to hear that people are asking that they challenge people to come and tell them any community that have been occupied or displaced and occupied. We have several communities that have been displaced, and some of them have actually been occupied. So what is happening, in summary, it is a terrorist invasion. Yes, that's why I call it. It's a terrorist invasion, and the outcome of this invasion is the genocide we are having today. People are being killed, and if you look at those that are suffering these attacks, look at it critically, then you compare it with what the United Nations define genocide to be, you will come to agree with me that what is happening in southern Kaduna is a pure case of genocide, because people that are being killed are either from the same ethnic group or from the same religion. So looking at what the United Nations say genocide is, then what is happening there is a pure case of genocide.
Okay, Stephen, thank you so much for that. And we're back to Cheta. Cheta, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I've switched off my video so that the network is a bit better.
That's fair. Okay, so Cheta, you were giving historical context to this, and it'll be good to just finish up on that.
Yeah. So I got cut off at the point where I was talking about the 1992 Zango Kataf issue.
Yeah. Yes.
So the Zango Kataf issue, by the time it was done, and the perpetrators were not brought to book, that sort of now, I think it's important to point out that the leaders in charge at the time were actually Northern Muslims. So it was more a Northern Muslims.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was more a case of them protecting their own, a fellow military general, than any other ethno-religious considerations. Unfortunately, as is always the case in Nigeria, perception is greater than reality.
And it ended up building a sort of, it was one of the things that laid a background of an unfortunate animosity in the minds of many people north of the Kaduna River. And this is important because it kind of explains the attitude many people north of the Kaduna River have towards what is happening today. Now, by the time we transited back to this democracy that we started in 1999, there were so many things which came into play that helped to poison an already toxic mix. So we had the government of Ahmed Makafi joining in the Sharia wave that was started by Ahmed Sani Yerima. We had the Miss World riots. We had all those little things. And in each of these occasions, people got killed, justice was not served. So you have that typically Nigerian issue of things happen, the perpetrators aren't brought to book. What that does is that it ends up strengthening the hand of people who believe that the only solution to all of this is to be violence. And that is what we are seeing. Now, added to that is the dimension of a resource conflict. Now, around Nigeria and around Nigeria's immediate geographical region, which is where the geopolitical context comes into play, the Sahara Desert is expanding. So take Nigeria as an example. As of independence in 1960, Nigeria had about 1 million square kilometers of land arable and available for farming. So things have happened since then. The population has grown and the available land has shrunk. So it is putting more people together, closer together, and this brings conflict. And when there's a shrinking pie and there's more conflicts, people begin to take sides. And what may have started as a resource fight begins to take on more colorations, especially ethnic and religious. And ethnic and religious conflicts are the kind of conflicts that we've clearly not been able to solve in a mature manner since independence in this country. I mean, I speak as someone who is from a part of the country that is constantly at the receiving end of a lot of ethnic jibes. So I know very well that Nigerians have not yet acquired the maturity to look at ethnic issues and to solve them. And those are the underlying issues. Every other thing, including all of what Stephen has described, is built on that. The inherent inability of Nigerians to look at issues dispassionately.
Thank you so much, Cheta. And you came from an angle that also included other places. And I think it's important for us to broaden this conversation. And I'll use the liberty of being the host of this conversation to do that. So within the context of the Nigerian state, Southern Kaduna, of course, is a very big area. I tell people that if you put Lagos, Osun, and Ekiti, there will still be space left. Some people don't think that this is just one local government or, just one small place. This is a very big area.
For the record, Southern Kaduna is 8 local government areas. It's kind of contiguous with the Kaduna South senatorial district.
Yes.
So that's 8 local government areas.
Yes.
No, that's not true. Hello?
Yeah, I said
officially. Officially, Stephen. And even officially, it still takes a lot of space. Like I said, I mentioned 3 southwestern states that this will easily gulp and still have space left. So I want us to shift from the context of Southern Kaduna alone. I mean, in the middle of grieving this week, we saw an attack in, Koton Karfe, Kogi State. I think that was SBM intelligence reported on that. 14 family members killed. There is a common denominator in these killings and these murders. So within the context of the Nigerian states, Cheta, what is happening? And is the semantics of language making us miss out on something? Because Niger State is in this, Katsina is in this, Sokoto is here, cut across. Zamfara. These are huge Hausa populations and autochthonous populations in the north. Again, you come to the southwest and southeast, south. Everyone is touched, well, according to the media. So within the context of the work you have been able to do, Cheta, what is happening in Nigeria and what is happening to Nigerians?
What is happening in Nigeria, and very unfortunately, is that Nigeria has completely failed to evolve. So you have a situation where, as of our so-called independence in 1960, the population of Nigeria was 47 million. Now they tell us that the population of Nigeria is 206 million. I disagree with that figure, but that's all besides.
I do too. I disagree too.
Yeah. The point is that the population of Nigeria has increased by a factor of 4 since that time, which means a lot more mouths to feed. And like I pointed out earlier, what we have now is as available lands to farm to feed this increase in population is 62% of what we had in 1960. So you have 4 times the population, almost half the land, and we have not improved agricultural methods in that period. So we still have a situation where our president expects us to go to the farm with our cutlass and hoes, rather than using modern methods to increase yields. The of our soil is among the poorest in the world. So essentially, you have a situation where the national cake, as it were, is shrinking, but the people who are aiming to share that cake is growing. So consider a situation. Let me use a bit of an analogy here. A family of 10, and they have a 50 kilogram keg of water to have their morning bath. Then so it's a father, 2 wives, and then a total of 4 children each. Then the father marries a 3rd wife, and the 3rd wife has another 4 children. So you now have a family of 15, but they still have 2 kegs, the same keg, 50 kilograms to bathe with. Suddenly, rather than each person having 5 kilograms of water to bathe with, you are in a situation where each person suddenly has just over 2 kilograms of water to bathe with. And they will fight. It's just natural. They will actually struggle for more. Now, when you now have this, think about it.
Okay, you're back. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
think about it. You have a situation where let's start from the first military incursion into politics. The people who were involved in that were not punished, and that led to the second incursion. The people who were involved in that were not punished, and in short, to a large extent, are still in power till today. And after that, more and more people began to take up arms, and they were not punished. Instead, you take up arms, you create enough violence, and the Nigerian state calls you to the table to share. So the lesson that is sent out, basically, is that, to get your just desserts in Nigeria, you have to be a very violent person. And it is that particular thing that we're seeing expanding. So unfortunately, the indigenous tribes of the southern Kaduna area, and when I say southern Kaduna here, I think it's important to point out that southern Kaduna shares geographical boundaries with Plateau State, shares geographical boundaries with parts of Niger states. The indigenous tribes there are portrayed as weak. So what we have is a situation where the so-called strong are preying on the weak. That's what we have here. And they are preying on the weak in a very callous manner, because they know that the worst that will happen is that Nigeria will say, guys, come and let us talk. Come and be settled with this. Let us do amnesty for you. This. They know. And that's essentially what is happening. Now, I am trying to look at this from a very detached point of view. You understand? Because if we are to have a hope of solving this problem, we need to be able to understand the underlying causes. But if we remove this detachment that I'm trying to form here, human beings are dying every day. That is the truth. Our security tracker just reported something today. I've not even looked at the report. I just saw the headline. But apparently in Udawa village, and forgive me if I mispronounce it, a businessman and farmer was killed by gunmen and 3 others abducted, sometime between last night and today. So when you get these stories every day, it damages the psyche of the people, and there will be people who will be looking for revenge because they believe that the state does not exist to protect them. So they believe that they should take justice into their own hands. So it will only get worse. It will only get worse. And at some point, if it is not taken care of, at some point, there are people, indigenous people in Southern Kaduna, who will decide that it is better for themselves to arm themselves and die fighting, rather than just wait for a state that clearly does not care about them. And that is the risk we are running. We are running a risk of the place becoming a Bantustan, where every man is there for himself and God for all of us. We see it already. We see the seeds of that in Zamfara, which, funny enough, also shares a border with Kaduna.
Yes. So I want to come back to the issue of the handling of this. And of course, very important what you said. I've had several conversations where I said, look, the splitting of Nigeria, and I think this is as far as when I started the conversation on, look, the Middle Belt crisis or the killings here. And I said, look, from what we're observing, the splitting of Nigeria may not be a Biafra thing. At the end of the day, Nigeria will be cut down, as Cheta has said, all man for himself, to several tribal militias holding several parts to themselves. You know, everybody carry a weapon. And of course, weapon proliferation is something here too. And yes, Cheta, did you want to say something?
No, I'm laughing when you mentioned the proliferation of weapons.
So the proliferation of weapons, and it's so easy.
The proliferation of weapons is on a ridiculous level.
It's so easy these days. And maybe, Cheta, you should touch briefly on that. We're trying to be a bit economical with time. But I also want people to know how easy, because you're working on this and you should know proliferation of weapons.
We just concluded a project. Which took us almost a year to do, where we tried to trace as much as we could with the proliferation of arms. And what I can tell you that it's easy to purchase arms, it's cheap, and this actually cuts to the heart of part of the problem. We were in the project that we did. We've actually published 2 videos from the project. By the time we publish the 3rd video, we'll release the report to the public. It was once we were able to compile a table of the cost of arms. You can buy a Kalashnikov in this country for as little as 300K. Now, 300K may sound like a lot of money, but 300K is not up to $1,000 nowadays. That's one. That's one. But more importantly, it cuts to the heart of why these conflicts continue. The people who wield these weapons, and go about shooting people cannot afford those weapons. What it means is that someone somewhere is signing the checks
for these weapons. Yes.
For these weapons, someone is bankrolling them, and we haven't. Let us go further east of Kaduna now to Borno. Can you name me one person who is signing a serious check, who is a financier of Boko Haram since 2009 that has been brought to book? Just one. I have all night. I can wait. It's basically the problem. The big wigs, if you play chess, you will understand. If you remove all the pawns but leave the queen, you still lose. The big wigs get caught, gets given a slap on the wrist, or are not brought to book at all. While the small fry are the ones who are expendable. That is one of the fundamental problems. Who are the people there's no denying it. There is an ethnic Fulani militia. There is a thief militia. There are actually about 4 different thief militia who are also in conflict with one another.
Yeah.
There is an Egon militia. There is an Alagon militia. There is a Junko militia. it is probably it is also the indigenous groups of Southern Kaduna that don't even have their own militia. But different groups
and of
have
course, these militias are growing.
These militias are growing. People are financing them, but we have not seen any of the financiers brought to book.
Okay. Let me come back to Stephen there.
Village is expendable.
Okay. Let me come to Stephen here. Stephen, in 2016, it was reported that the governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, it was reported by Vanguard. What I'm seeing here is a link from Vanguard. That Malam Nasir El-Rufai allegedly paid some of the Fulani herdsmen who have lost their men and cattle and sought for revenge and needed to be pacified. However, this hasn't stopped. The pacifying with money of these people has not stopped the killings. So the killings in this region or in this area. So what is wrong? I think with that, what can we say is, or is the approach of the government right? Or what has the government gotten right and what have they gotten wrong in this? And yes, what approach and what is the preferred approach? So what is the approach that you see the government taking, and is it right? Is it wrong? And in view of that, within the context of right and wrong, what is the preferred approach for the government to take, both state and federal? But let's start from states. Stephen.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that was in December 2016. It was not just Vanguard that reported the story. In fact, it was aired on Channels TV. It was during a program on Channels TV where he admitted to, in his own effort to stop the killings, he said we traveled to some African countries. Let me quote him. He said when he met with them, he said there's a new governor in town who is also a Fulani like you. So in order to pacify them to stop the killings, he even offered them monetary compensation. But the question is, while offering them monetary compensation, what was the deal? Did they surrender their arms to the government? And mind you, this militia we're talking about, according to what he said on Channels TV, was that he traveled to some African countries, West African countries. I think Mali was one of those countries, to meet with these militias. They are not Nigerians. It means foreigners can actually come into your country and kill your people, and in your own effort to stop the killing, you will follow them and pay them money. And look at it, after that confession in December 2016, the killings intensified. In fact, it became so worse that I became of the opinion that those militia actually took the money to acquire more arms because they became more deadly after the confession of paying compensation to them. So that was not the solution. If you ask me, that was it was a mistake, because you don't give money to terrorists to stop killing. Killing is their occupation. So they will continue to kill. If you give them money, in short, they are going to use that money to acquire more arms. So I think the government is not getting it right. And what I expected from the Kaduna State government is for them to have come out publicly to offer an apology. Like, look, just like the Katsina State governor did some time ago, he came out and apologized. He said, look, he's not going to have any MOU with this bandit again because they have failed him. Now, you don't negotiate with terrorists. You can only negotiate with them if they are ready to surrender all their arms. And mind you, these guys, there's no way they will surrender all their arms. Instead, they will take money from you and buy more arms. And that is why after that payment of compensation, there will be more killings in Southern Kaduna. And there's no sign that these killings are going to stop anytime soon. So what I think the government needs to do first and foremost is to acknowledge what the actual problem is. Because all this narrative of non-government, banditry, farmers' header splashes, or revenge killing, it will not help the situation. The government must acknowledge the fact that there's a terrorism being waged on its citizens. I think that's the point the government is missing here. This thing is an act of terrorism.
Can I jump in a bit?
Yes, Cheta.
Yeah, something that Stephen has said that is very important, because it's a question that is unanswered and that has been unanswered since 1914. Just who is a Nigerian? And so we need to, so it's this simple. There are so many people involved in this conflict who do not see one another as the same. So the man, for example, in Katsina is more likely to see the man in Maradi in Niger as more of his kin than the man in Zango Kataf. And when you have that kind of dichotomy, then the man in Katsina is more likely not to care if the man in Zango Kataf is being killed by somebody who came from Maradi. And that's something that we need to define. We need to define who is a Nigerian. Secondly, with respect to Governor El Rufai's issue in Channels TV, I heard that interview as well. And I was actually quite shocked when that happened. It was on Channels. But if you go back, Governor El Rufai has not done anything different from what so many Nigerian leaders before him and so many after him have done. Violent men have come, they have seized the initiative, and our government, in a whimper, surrenders to them and pays them. Remember that there was this chap in Zamfara State, Buhari Ndeji, who was conducting raids all over the place, and they came and they paid him a whole lot of money. What happened? These people simply bought more guns and intensified the operation because this is the only skill that they have. Let us look at it. And this is not just a northern Nigeria problem. It's all over Nigeria. You pay these people off, and they go on and they buy more, and they become big boys on the back of violence breeds more violence. But it comes down to a basic failure of the Nigerian state. A failure of the Nigerian state to actually provide employment for its people. Second failure, which I've talked about earlier, a failure to punish people for doing wrong, which essentially makes it lucrative and attractive for younger people to go into this.
Yes. I want to bring up an issue off the back of, Stephen saying that, like the Zamfara state governor. I am not of the opinion that an apology is enough. I feel like if you've apologized and said you can't protect me, then perhaps you hand over to the mantle to people who can protect. However, I'm looking at this report from The Cable, which is a reputable media outlet, I think on new media outlet. And the report says that, this is from March 2nd, 2020, Stephen. And it says, I apologize for the failure to protect you. Rufai begs victims of fresh attacks. And these attacks were in another part of Kaduna, Igabi and Giwa local government.
Those are and
so, yes, so is it, how do you feel as someone from Southern Kaduna seeing that, within the same Kaduna, we're looking at similar kinds of raids, similar, like the modus operandi it's the same. The modus operandi of these killings are the same. The brutality is the same. And in terms of strategy and looking at what is happening here, one should be able to draw a straight line and say, well, this is happening, wait, there's a common denominator here, and this is a straight line. But one group of people get an apology, and then others get what they are getting now in terms of, they are this way, they are that way. How do you feel about that? And will an apology change anything?
Okay, thank you very much. You see, the bottom line here is that people are being killed. People were killed in Igabi. I think over 50 persons were killed during that attack. And that day, I was telling a friend, I said, I saw a different Governor Nasir El-Rufai. Because you could see the empathy, you could see him talking to people who have actually lost loved ones and consoling them, even if they are political statements. I don't care, because those statements can go a long way to calm the nerves of people, especially when they've lost loved ones. I remember he made a statement. He said, never again shall the government negotiate with criminals. You understand? But he actually went there himself. I hope you know that. He went there himself with his convoy. But when attacks happen in southern Kaduna, there's always this deafening silence in the government house. There's a loud silence that you could hear, you could see, and you could feel the silence. And when the government house finally decide to issue a statement, you know, what they say will even provoke those who are mourning their death. Like somebody has lost a child, a wife, or a husband, and all you have to tell that person is that these killings are revenge killings. You know, so the response of the government on both sides, I think matters too, because there's a way you talk to people, and they will know that, oh, even if it's just faking it, at least they will know that, wow, this person is showing concern. So I think the Southern Kaduna people have not really had such from the government. The response is always, you guys are the cause. You don't want to live in peace. If you decide to live in peace, then there will be peace. You know, I think these utterances are unnecessary, especially considering the fact that lives are being lost, and these people that are being killed, they know nothing about why they are being killed. They are invaded, they are killed. So I think the response of the government can go a long way. Like Mr. Cheta says something, because such responses or such reactions from the government can actually push the people to the wall, and they feel, okay, we are helpless. Since the state cannot protect us, then let's resort to self-help. And you know, self-help can actually lead to more problems. It can escalate the problem. So I think the response of the government can go a long way in helping to calm the nerves of the Southern Kaduna people, especially those that have been affected by this violence.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you, Stephen.
Sorry,
Okay,
Nzi, let me just add something. I mean, the point of Giwa and Igabi actually piggybacks on what I said earlier, which is the question of citizenship and who the Nigerian sees as his own. Now, Giwa local government area shares a boundary with Zamfara State. It is almost entirely Muslim, almost entirely Hausa Fulani. Igabi local government area, which shares a boundary with Giwa local government area, is dominated by Muslims, dominated by Hausa Fulani. It hosts the Command and Staff College in Jaji. So when you have those kind of things, and that is where the governor saw it fit to personally go and apologize, it actually reinforces the belief that he's looking at one set of people as his own people and the other set of people as, okay, whatever. And that is the fundamental problem. Am I the governor of all of Kaduna State or of a certain part of Kaduna State? Am I the president of all of Nigeria or of a certain part of Nigeria? These little things, again, perception is greater than reality. And that is one very important place where many of our governments, but most especially the current government, has failed. The current government has, by its attitudes, omissions, commissions, steps and missteps, engender the perception that there are some people in Nigeria that are the 97% and there are some other people that are the 5%. And that is at the heart of the worsening problems we're having in the country.
Okay, thank you, Cheta. And I want to point to a map put out by SBM Intelligence, and in that map we saw military formations, and there are quite a number of military formations in southern Kaduna. Jama local government has one, for example, and I was looking at the recent attack on Zipak, for example. Zipak houses the Fanswam tribe, and this is a little tribe, like it's a small tribe of 30,000 or even below people. And right before Zipak, there used to be a military checkpoint. Of course, at the day of this attack, people said they didn't see anybody. And I don't know for how long they haven't seen anyone there. But let's come back to these military formations are in these places. And Operation Safe Haven in Kaduna, and the military has come out to state categorically that they are for lack of a better word, understaffed, that they have limited manpower to tackle southern Kaduna killings. So I want to look at the military right now, the, should I say functionality of the military, the ability of the military. Does Nigeria have a strong military? What is happening with our military? And commander of the Safe Haven, I really would hate to call his name without his correct title, but the name is Chukwuemeka Okonkwo, and he says that the military does not have enough manpower to tackle the violence in the southern part of Kaduna State. So with specific reference to this now, isn't this indicative of the security crisis we have in Nigeria at large and the inability of our security chiefs to fix some of these woes? So, Cheta, what do you say to this? What do you say to them? Number one, admitting that they do not have enough manpower. Number two, I noticed that a lot of our leaders and even security chiefs and people who are supposed to provide solutions spend a lot of time telling us, oh, this is why they are fighting. And for me, a couple of concerns there is that I feel, oh, are you a journalist? You're supposed to stop. People can have hate for each other. People can have their differences, but your job is to ensure that these things do not cross a certain line. So how do you feel about them coming to report this is the why, as opposed to the solving of the why or whatever reasons they give? And within the context of Nigeria and our sovereignty, and the military openly admitting this, especially in crises that contain, non-state actors that are also from foreign lands. What do you have to say about this, Cheta? I would want, again, your context should be from the expertise of the work you do.
Chukwuemeka Okonkwo is a major general.
Oh!
And it's actually quite, General Okonkwo is actually quite correct. The Nigerian military is undermanned. And not only is it undermanned, the Nigerian military has been playing support for the Nigerian police for a very long time, such that as we speak, the Nigerian military is deployed in 35 of Nigeria's 36 states, essentially playing support roles to the police. It is overstretched. There's no other word in the English language to define what is going on with the Nigerian military. Unfortunately, the police itself is, to a former Assistant Inspector General of the police, 80% of policemen are doing handbag for VIPs.
Yeah.
So
I remember that report.
Yeah, you have a situation where so many policemen are, rather than doing what they're meant to be doing, they are deployed on close protection details to make people feel like big boys and to drive me out of traffic in Lagos so that the big boy will pass. And then the military, who are supposed to be doing something more serious, such as fighting the Boko Haram insurgency that has entered into its year more or less, are basically stretched beyond all recognition. So that is one of the complications of the whole matter, that the military is no longer capable of dealing with this thing.
Yeah.
Secondly, is the fact that we don't even do very intelligent deployments. We don't do we don't collect intelligence properly. And again, perception is greater than reality. So once upon a time, I was in a community in Jema, and one of the people who I spoke to told me something very, very, which I reported up immediately. He said, we were here, we have collected some small guns. The army came yesterday and they disarmed us. I will not be surprised if these people come and attack us tomorrow. I left and I reported it to two military guys that I know who are in chain of command that see what is happening. I have heard this in Kaduna. I have heard this in Zamfara. I have heard this in Benue. I have heard this in Delta, and I've heard this in Abia. What this does is that it gives people the impression that the military is colluding with their attackers.
Yeah.
Quite unfortunately, that young man's prediction proved correct. He missed it by just a day, because it was 2 days after I left that community was attacked. There is no way, heaven, earth, Valhalla, however you want to describe it, there's no way those people will not believe that the military is colluding, that the military is colluding with their attackers, given that it was conveniently after the military came to disarm them. They had gathered the little that they had to get some small weapons for their own protection, not even automatic weapons, as we were talking of hunting rifles and the rest of that. The military came and disarmed them, and then they got attacked. How do you want to tell those people that the military are not working with the attackers?
And these are stories that are recurring across communities.
They are recurring. They are recurring.
Across communities.
I haven't seen any. I haven't seen any hard evidence of those stories, but I've heard them in enough places in various parts of the country to believe that there's something to them.
Okay, Stephen.
Sorry. Yes, let me come in. You see, the few months I spent in prison, I actually met.
I keep forgetting you're an ex-convict area.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not an ex-con. I'm not yet convicted. Sorry.
Not the same thing. Not the same Papa.
I met lots of Southern Kaduna youths in the prison, and their stories are pathetic. Like, okay, we're running a vigilante shift in our communities, and the military came, arrested us, and that's why we are here. I think I met 23 youths from Kajuru local government between the ages of 16 and 22. They spent 8 months in Kaduna prison, 8 solid months. What was their crime? They were trying to defend their communities. Sometimes in June 2019, they were discharged, and that's how the case died off. Nobody came to say sorry, no compensation, nothing. Now, you see, in Jema local government, in Bakin Kogi axis to be precise, in 2017, there was a military operation launched to mop out light weapons. And guess what they were mopping out? Cutlasses, hunting guns, machetes, and the rest of them. After that operation,
it's funny.
The community.
It's funny. I didn't want to say the community that I was in.
The community. It's in the public domain already. The community came under severe attack. People were killed. Now, tell me why this community will not believe that the military is complicit.
Okay.
Then, sorry, another thing. I think also the military is misinformed. Let me explain. You see, before the deployment of this military or security generally, they tell them that there's a communal clashes between the indigenous Southern Kaduna people and the Fulani people. So they go there with the mindset that, look, we are coming here to quell a communal clash rather. But when they get there, they discover that it's more of a terrorist invasion, and that's why they are overwhelmed, because they told us we are coming here to stop a fight between community A and B. But when they get there, they notice that these guys that are coming are well armed, well organized, well trained. So, of course, they will have to be overwhelmed. So it's not entirely due to shortage of manpower. Let me tell you, if you have 10 military or 10 soldiers in a village, there is no way these herdsmen will come and they will hear gunshot and they will stay. I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this from interactions I've had with the villagers.
Thank you, Stephen. Another thing I wanted to ask is, especially with the Boko Haram war, we've been on this for 11 years now, and on this for 11 years, and Cheta, what we know, especially the same way with the attacks, you know, in the entire country from northern Nigeria, northwest, middle belt, and south, southeast, southwest, is these people attackers can operate in cells. You can just take 2 armed people to enter a place and do maximum damage that can ruin a community for years. And they have decentralized command in essence, just like Boko Haram. Command is decentralized, but our army is still using, I would say, centralized. Can you hear me, Cheta?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I was saying that when it comes to these attacks, for example, 2 people riding on a bike can enter a community and do maximum harm and leave, right? But our army still, and so you notice that, like with Boko Haram, like with these attacks in the northwest region, Katsina, Sokoto, everywhere, it can just take 2 people riding on a bike with weapons to do maximum damage, or the kind of damage that will leave a community harmed for, traumatized for years, right? So it shows that their methods, they have decentralized, and this is helping them achieve maximum success. And Nigerian security system is still holding on to that federal unit and wait for order from somewhere and all of that. So in terms of how, whatever name we want to give it, Boko Haram, bandits, attackers, herdsmen, central theme is non-state actors preying and attacking Nigerians. So if they operate and they are decentralized and this is helping them achieve maximum success in what they set out to do, what do we have to say about our modus operandi? That is the modus operandi of the Nigerian security system, and what can be done better?
Okay, before I answer that, there's one group that we haven't mentioned that is very likely to be involved deeply in this Kaduna thing, and that group is Ansaru. Ansaru is clearly an extremist Muslim group that is dedicated to killing non-Muslims, not necessarily just Christians. It's important to mention them because one of the attacks that happened very recently, in which 18 people were killed at a wedding party, had all the hallmarks of Ansaru. Now, having said that, in direct answer to your question, part of the problems is that Nigeria inherited this colonial force that we did nothing to reform. The colonial force that we inherited has existed in this form essentially since it was used to crush the Aba women's protest of 1929. That was, what, 91 years ago. And it was designed in that manner so that it will be used at every given point in time to suppress the citizens, not to solve crime, not to solve problems which the citizens had among themselves, but to keep the colonists in power. When the colonists finally left in 1960, our new elite simply changed the mission of this military and police system to keeping them in power. So the Nigerian security architecture is all about regime security. It's not about the security of Nigerians.
Yeah.
That is one of the underlying causes of all of these problems. The Nigerian security system does not exist to serve the people of Southern Kaduna. The Nigerian security system does not exist to serve the people of Katsina. The Nigerian security system does not exist to serve the people of Zamfara. It exists to serve the governing elite and their cronies.
Okay.
How do we change this system? That's a very complicated question because it's quite entrenched.
I think that conversation, I'll throw it to Enough is Enough Nigeria. So actually have key conversations on the Nigerian security system. What was the setup for and how can we correct this? So I think it's an important conversation. But carry on, Cheta.
Yeah, it's quite entrenched. And it's, again, I mean, we were promised that this will just be an hour. So an hour is just about up. Trying to solve the problem of the Nigerian security architecture is not even a 1 hour conversation. But it starts from the police reform bill that was put forward by Senator Ibn Naala, which unfortunately was not passed before the expiration of the 8th National Assembly.
Okay. So to round up, Stephen, I'm throwing this question to you. What are the elected officials of Southern Kaduna doing? So we have State House of Assembly members, Federal House of the House of Reps, Senate, and across board from the ward to whatever level. What are they doing to stop these attacks? We can't hear you, Stephen. You're muted.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, good.
Yes,
now we have a problem here because some of these elected lawmakers, they don't even know the problem. Some of them are ignorant of what the real problem is. Like you have a lawmaker going on air saying something that is irrelevant, saying something that has nothing to do with the problem on ground. So these guys are, most of them are opportunistic. They just come in. They were opportune to come into power, and that is why they don't even know what the problem is. So they can't do anything. You understand? And let's even look at it this way. Let's even assume they know what the problem is. What can they do? They can only talk, shout in the floor of the Senate or the House of Rep or the State House of Assembly. What happened at the end of the day? We have a situation where I think last week the National Assembly passed a vote of no confidence on the security chiefs. What happened? The presidency came out and said that it's none of their business. So it goes beyond the legislative arm of government. The executive control this.
You're breaking, Stephen. Stephen. Okay, so we've lost Stephen. And
we're in Nigeria, internet is bad, don't worry.
so, Cheta, just something to round up, and I think solutions. How do we solve the problem in Southern Kaduna?
It starts with all of us understanding one another, being our brother's keeper.
That's what they'll do.
Okay, Stephen is back in, so let's. Stephen is back in. Let me hold my thoughts.
Stephen, can you hear me? No, Cheta, just carry. Okay, Stephen, can you hear me? Unmute your mic and carry on. Stephen, your mic is mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. And please, we need to round up quickly, sir.
Good. So what I think can solve this problem in Southern Kaduna, one, the government must stop deceiving itself and admit what the actual problem is. These are non-state actors. Some of them are from foreign countries. You need to use military action. It has to be total military action. These guys they stay in the forest. Sometimes our people see them in the bushes. You know, when they go to farm, they see them. So these guys are not ghosts. They don't disappear into the atmosphere. They are somewhere. We have all the helicopters. We have all the reconnaissance tools. So the military must deploy full military might against this militia. I think that's the only way to solve this problem, for at least for now, to be able to stop the killings.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. And Cheta, last words. How do we solve the problem in Southern Kaduna?
Solving the problem starts with us being our brother's keeper. We need to care enough about the indigenous tribes of Southern Kaduna and basically all over the north central, enough to care that people are being killed. And then, very importantly, we need to follow the money. Because if we follow the money, we will find out who is paying for all of this. And when we can find out and bring to book the people that are paying for all of this, then it will end. Until that moment, they will keep finding new pawns to use.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Enough is Enough Nigeria, for enabling this conversation. And for me, it was important for us to have the conversation on key issues, you know, security and what needs to be done by the security personnel. And why this is clear is if you say there are killings on both sides, but this is like the Solomon issue, you know, you bring a child and both people say, I'm the mother of the child. And Solomon says, you know what, let's split this child right in the middle. And one says, that's good. And the other goes, no. And then Solomon figures it out. So if everyone is admitting in Nigeria that the security outfits are not doing enough, there's a failure in response. But, you know, certain groups are saying these are equal on both sides, but we really like what everyone is doing about it. Then there is a problem, and we need to examine these kinds of statements where there is an, you know, again, an admitted lapse in response by leaders, an admitted lapse in response on all ends. The military is saying they are understaffed or they don't have enough people. Well, understaffed is a good word. Governors are apologizing that they have failed to protect people. And in the last scheme of that, everyone should be sad and upset. But if we have people who are saying, oh, these things are happening and we're dying too, but we like the response, this should be looked into. I think it points to something that we're not admitting at this point. Thank you everyone for coming. Enough is Enough Nigeria is tasked going forward for special conversations on, again, people tasked to protect the sovereignty of Nigeria, protect the lives of Nigeria. And is this what they're actually set up to do, given Nigeria's colonial and military history? And we need to look at this past, especially as Cheta Nwanze has broken it down to look at where we are going. We need to also examine, you know, the issues, speaking to justice, the absence of faith, and people interpreting it for themselves or interpreting the law for themselves when this is not served. We need to look at the seriousness of some of the things that Stephen Kefason said with respect to villagers. And, you know, what they have seen, people who have been arrested, no conversations after their release. We need to look at, again, especially two things for me. It is justice and response. And another thing is historical context, especially with the bigger picture of Nigeria. I remain Ndi Kato, ED of the Nidari Foundation, and this is us signing out. This has been a very great conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and I hope that this kickstarts fruitful conversations going forward. But again, for me, I feel we've gone way past the stage of just talking, but that these conversations will lead us to more actions. Thank you, and this is me signing out. Bye, everyone.